ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today for the ELF plenary session on new economic models, the future of work. My name is Jürgen Martens and I'm the president of the European Liberal Forum. We are the official political foundation of the ALDE party, and together with our 36 member organizations, we work all over Europe to promote liberalism and liberal values. Today, we are going to discuss the future of our economies and the future of work in particular. Because as the European economy is bouncing back, now is the right time to think about the direction in which we are heading. Rethinking the economy is a topic on which ELF and its member organizations have been working on extensively in the last few years. It is also the theme of a large content-coordinated series of projects within ELF under the name New Economic Models. Together with our member organizations, we have organized a series of expert workshops, roundtables, and panel discussions this year as a part of this project. We bundled the output of these discussions in an e-publication featuring authors from 6 different ELF member organizations. The future of the labor market is naturally at the very core of this theme, with many new opportunities and challenges arising as new technologies gain traction. In case you want to learn more about our work on this topic, you can download and read our New Economic Models e-publication, that is, which we completed last week. In and outside this room, we have information cards available with more details on this study. I also warmly invite you all to visit the stands of our member organizations outside the auditorium and to further discuss your ideas here. But please stay seated for now, because we have invited 4 distinguished speakers to join us first. And I will leave the introduction to the moderator, Kamran Ullah, who will say a few words in a moment. Let me therefore once again welcome you to this plenary session, and I hope for an inspiring discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Martens, and thank you also to tell us that there is a report. You can download it already, but we'll hand out them also outside, so you know where to find them. So as I told you, we have 4 speakers who will give their views on this issue. And first of all, I want to invite on stage the European Commissioner for Mobility and Transport, Mrs. Violeta Bulc.
Thank you. My dear friends, partners, and of course, co-fighters for a liberal and free Europe. It's an incredible honor to be here today with you. And in spite of circling for quite some time above Amsterdam, we finally beat the fog and came down, and I was glad to be able to listen to the previous panel and get the flavor of the energy that was present in the room for the last 2 days. Today, we will talk about the future of work. And I would like to invite you that we take a bigger picture and that we try to go beyond just work if we want to discuss the future of work. I do believe that this discussion should be about the future of the society. How do we see ourselves evolving as humans as well, being challenged by so many serious issues that, of course, challenge also the future of work. I would like us to go beyond just how can we ensure new jobs and how can we ensure that the people who work today will be able to work in 10 and 20 years as well. I would like us to dare to think that maybe, just maybe, we can also co-create the history and co-create the future of the society. We've heard about a lot of challenges that the EU has been facing. But if there is one thing that EU has demonstrated while resolving the issues that it's been challenged with, is that we were able to come together and discuss the issues and then move forward with concrete proposals and agendas. And at every step, we were able to ask ourselves, are we on the right track? And then again, push for additional steps and changes that were needed in regulation, in the way how we work and address the challenges, and of course, in a way how we cooperate beyond EU. That's why I'd like to share a couple of minutes with you the story how I see the future of jobs through the story of transport. I know that this is the word that you probably haven't heard today and yesterday about, but just imagine that there was no transport. And as we've heard, my colleague from Germany could not come and join us because the plane was delayed. I could not come and join you in time for the afternoon discussion because the plane was delayed. But at the same time, the reason why EU story is successful is because of transport. Because we have TEN-T network and corridors that connect all member states. Because we are able to connect beyond EU with all continents in the most advanced and progressive way. And let me now tell you the story of jobs through these core elements that we use in order to shape the future of European transport. First of all, efficiency. Some might argue that through the efficiency we lose jobs. Well, through the efficiency, we just create better conditions for our competitiveness, that we are connected better, that we can use the infrastructure in a more efficient way, which means that the price performance is much better than before. And one of the key advantages of European economy is the efficiency of our logistic networks compared to other continents around the world. And you know how much more we can do. But at the same time, the connectivity creates opportunities that we can actually identify new partnerships, that we can seek new needs around EU and beyond on a global scale. And that creates new jobs. But what kind of knowledge, what kind of experiences, and what kind of skills do we need in order to be able to capitalize on that? How is the behavior of us as humans responding to these conditions? We need more anthropologists, we need more psychologists, we need more new skills at the table in order to really discuss these issues. Not only social workers and HR specialists, but we need to engage on a very systemic and horizontal, holistic way in order to understand what is this causing to our society and where can we evolve as humans in order to really coexist well and make sure that it's not only the privileged 1% in this planet Earth, the one who can generate better future for themselves and for their children and grandchildren. But let's not forget, for ourselves as well. I will move on decarbonization. If we talk about jobs, if we talk about success, can you even imagine having a job and being successful in a poisonous environment where your lifetime gets shrinked to a half? So if we want to do the future jobs, jobs that will be worth of human race, we need to talk about decarbonization. We need to engage the green technologies and green solutions and business models that engage green into solving the challenge of future of jobs. And can you imagine today in the 21st century to think about the future of jobs without digitalization? Unfortunately, most of the time we're trying to scare people. We try to say, oh, digitalization will kill the jobs. We're liberals, we should know better. New generation of technology never kills the jobs. but brings new type of jobs, creates new opportunities. So instead of trying to bring fear among workforce, among people and among unions, wouldn't we, liberals, should lead the way and discuss how many new opportunities we have and engage people into long life learning, that they will always feel strong and ready, no matter what comes around the corner, because in 10 years' time there will be a new technology on the horizon. There will be a new business model that will emerge. So the only way that we can constantly take an advantage of that we embrace what is coming and get shaped up with the right skills for a constant readjustment and cooperation and solidarity and understanding that we can be successful only if we move on together. And we can see it in transport, because so many changes right now are happening through decarbonization and through digitalization, which are two core drivers for our efficiency and global connectivity. And I can see workers constantly coming to my office fighting for retention of jobs, for the status quo. Don't make changes because we're going to lose jobs. And I say, come to me and ask for money and ask for guidance and ask for assistance that you gain new skills. Then you don't need to be afraid of labor from cheaper markets, because you will have skills that the modern society needs. And this is where we are focusing right now in transport. I'm trying to engage with unions. I'm trying to engage with business owners. I'm trying to engage with managers and CEOs in order that they understand that their power is not in trying to challenge labor all the time, but to constantly provide them opportunity that they evolve together with organizations. And I hope I can get you on my side on this topic, and that we, as liberals, can actually lead the way to show that people can keep their dignity, but at the same time that they have responsibility towards themselves, that they need to learn, they need to upgrade the skills, knowledge, and ways how we cooperate. And that is very much seen when we try to engage and bring new business models on board in transport. I bring all stakeholders in one room. Unions, owners, experts, and commissions people, parliamentarians many times. And we discuss openly. And at the end, we create an action plan. So where am I going with this? New ways of participation, of engagement and inclusion are absolutely necessary if we want to share the wealth and lead in the world that will have a sustainable future. So let's think about new models also in a way how we engage with each other, in the way how we relate to each other. And here, liberal ideas are more than necessary, because freedom, engagement, equal opportunity rights are really the basis if people want to cooperate on such new terms. And that is how we can then have all of us, being politicians or engineers or nurses or teachers or any other profession, to be able to compete globally. Not to be afraid, but to be engaged. You know the difference, don't you? What can you do when you are afraid? You hide yourself. You are not creative. You try to defend something that is old, that you know that it's obsolete, but because it's the only thing that is known to you, you try to defend. But other energy, which I love, is that you constantly have faith that you have people around you that will support the drive for the change, which is such a natural behavior. And we can do it together. So that's why I'm very much engaged, together with my team, in creating opportunities for innovation, but engaging innovation. Constantly trying to support the emergence of new, but not forget about people, about skills, and about development that we need as a society. And that's why I'm so happy and proud that we were able to bring on board so many investments in EU transport. Because only through investments we can actually support the story I'm talking about new, engaging, and moving forward together. And not only about grants, even though I have the biggest portfolio ever any commissioner for transport had, 24 billion euros for 6 years. But that is not enough. So we started to engage with innovative investment mechanisms, and we brought additional 22 billion euros only in 2.5 years' time on board. And you can see that in transport things are bubbling. They are starting to create these opportunities for people to really see the future, to see that they can get engaged and that there is room for everyone if we really work together well. So let me end my presentation and invitation then, of course, later on to all the speakers that we will engage on the stage. When we think about future of work, let's use liberal values. Let's use the values that are also the foundation of the European Union and be bold enough to dare to propose engagement mechanisms that not only retain jobs, develop them, open new ones, but constantly really show people that there is opportunity for everyone if they dare to enter into the new story and if they invest in their skills by themselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, to share your story and also the plans and where you're working on. Talking about work, we can't do it just with people from politics. We also need the businesses here. So I'm very keen to introduce the next speaker. He's the public policy manager right now at Google. In the past, he worked also for European Parliament and was a former attorney. But now he's working at Google, Mr. Georgios Mavros.
So, hi everybody. My name is Jurgis Mavros. As it has been said, I work for Google. I'm based in Brussels, but I'm a Greek citizen. And to be honest, I find it a bit ironic for a Greek citizen to talk about the future of work, because with an unemployment rate in Greece of around 25%, it's probably the present of work which is an issue, not the future of work. But anyway, coming back to our topic, back to the future, I think that I would start by saying that many generations before us had to grapple with the societal and economic implications of technology disruption. The Industrial Revolution, the advent of electricity, the widespread use of motorcycle vehicles in the 20th century, the introduction of computers in the 70s, and so on and so forth. And each of these generations felt that this was a turning point for us. In my opinion, however, we live in a particular moment, and people, in my opinion, feel a bit worried, and this is something that we should understand. They experience a sense of anxiety in the face of technology upheaval, with the public discourse being dominated by artificial intelligence taking over the world, increasing automation, killing jobs, more and more use of robots with many concerns from privacy to security, and so on and so forth. So people are anxious, and we need to acknowledge that, even if technology has massively improved our lives and our well-being. So I'm not a futurologist. I don't know what the future holds because I cannot read the stars. But I do know that people much smarter than me have cautioned us against making hasty decisions and hasty choices in the face of anxiety. Because if we want to make intelligent choices for our future that will serve us very well in the future, we need today to look plainly and carefully, actually, at what we have at our disposal. Google is an engineering company, and as an engineering company, we believe that there are two things that we need to take into account: facts and data. And I would add a third thing, which is past experience. As I said, I'm Greek. We love history in Greece, so I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from the past. So I would start with my own point, the lessons that we can learn from the past. So what does the past teach us about technology? So the first thing, in my opinion, that the past teaches us is that the very nature of jobs and work has never been stable. In the US, in the last century, agriculture went down from 70 to 20%. This is when the high school movement was launched and secondary schools spread all over the United States. President Kennedy has famously said that if people are smart enough to create machines which put out of the work people, then these very same people can find ways to bring them back to work. The second thing that the past teaches us is that many existing companies might not be able to adapt, but others will. Just to take an example, some of you might remember Blockbuster, which was a video rental chain which had over 10,000 shops around the world in its prime, and unfortunately for them, they didn't manage to adapt to the digital age. But there is another company which started as a video rental company, Netflix, who actually managed to adapt to new consumer demands, and as we all know, they became today probably the most favorite and one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world. The third thing that the past teaches us is that technology brings unexpected opportunities. So 20 years ago, 15 years ago even, nobody would have expected the rise of the app economy. And the app economy will be worth $6 trillion in 5 years' time. Thanks to open platforms such as Android, app developers, they have the ability to reach billions of users in a very short period of time. So this is driving innovation and job growth around Europe, and actually, for you who don't know it, 40 out of the most 100 sold apps in the world come from Europe. They are actually developed in Europe. And so only thanks to Android, we have created 1.2 million jobs in Europe, which has also spurred EU manufacturers such as BQ in Spain or Arcos in France. So technology bring opportunities that we cannot foresee today. So this is what the past teaches us. The next thing that, in my opinion, the next building block that we need to see, as I said, is data. So when it comes to companies, we have a lot of data which show that companies, and in particular SMEs who embrace the web, who embrace digital tools, grow up to 5 times faster than their competitors. And they also create twice the jobs that their competitors do. Now, when it comes to the labor market, unfortunately, McKinsey, they were not able to join this panel today, but actually they have carried out a study on 9 countries, mostly in the Nordics, which basically shows that technology has always been and will continue to provide a productivity boost and will be a net contributor to job creation in these 9 markets, but also in Europe. I would like to highlight one thing about jobs, because this is probably one of the most touchy issues. Some jobs will be displaced by the advent of new technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence. But in most of the cases, what we expect that it's going to happen is that actually the tasks that compose a specific job will be disentangled, will be unbundled. And part of these tasks will be carried out by the machine or software, and then the rest, the other tasks, will be still be carried out by humans. So actually, what we expect to happen is that these technology or machines will not replace humans. They will be complementary to humans. So the last thing I would like to touch upon is facts, because actually artificial intelligence is already playing a key role in our economies today, particularly in regulated markets and industries such as banking and insurance. JP Morgan, for example, they are using AI to process around 12,000 loan agreements per year. This has helped them to decrease the period of time that it takes for them to process this loan from around 400,000 hours to just a few hours, which obviously leaves a lot more time to their lawyers and to their officers to do some other tasks which are much more meaningful than going through paperwork. And according to the company, it also reduced the mistakes which are usually made by human errors. Another example I would like to provide is insurance. As I said, so insurers, they're using machine learning technologies to process claims. And actually, they managed to shorten the average time that they spend on a claim from 15 days to just 3. So, if we take into account the past experience, data, and facts, I believe that we can be optimistic about the future and about the technology. But technology, it's not an end in itself. Technology, it's a tool. And technology, it's not a destiny. Technology, it's a journey. And this journey, it's not decided by a single company or a handful of companies. The question of when and how all these new technologies will be applied, it's a conversation that should take place among citizens, governments, businesses, and educators. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. So from transportation to data and to facts, and later on we will discuss this with all the 4 panelists. Let's move on from transport to data to another view, maybe also something about education. I want to invite a member of European Parliament who has been a businesswoman herself, a successful one, I have to say. And amongst others, she's a member of the committee on, and I have to just see, employment and social affairs, I have to say. Please, Martina Dlabajova.
Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, as you see, European Liberal Forum is very good to organizing speakers of the panel, because we can have a speaker from the country with the highest unemployment in Europe, and we can have a speaker from the country which has now the lowest unemployment in Europe, Czech Republic. Do I have a receipt? No, I don't. I can just share with you all the ideas. I went through them as a businesswoman before, and now as a policymaker, as a member of the European Parliament. Of course, there are several challenges ahead of us in Europe: how to reduce unemployment, especially youth unemployment, and how to adapt to fast-changing requirements of the labor market. Automatization, digitalization, robotization, online platforms, and other innovations are changing the fundamental nature of work. This logically is causing a lot of fear, a lot of concerns. And unfortunately, I must tell you, very often these changes are a source of populism and panic. Panic of the way, like, the robots will replace our jobs, the robots will replace us. And not only robots. Lately, unfortunately, also job mobility became a hot topic and a sensitive political issue in the EU. So you know that there are now all discussions about the Posted Workers Directive, about freedom of services and people, and rising protectionism in some countries. Should we really fear these changes and free movement of people on the labor market in EU to hinder technological development and job mobility in Europe? No, I don't think so. I think that we should be really concerned about what we should really be concerned is skills mismatch in Europe. And this actually relates to both. It relates to mobility and it relates to technological development. The headline of this debate is the future of work. But you know, we create the future right now. The changes on the labor market are already happening. The so-called digital revolution is unfolding fast, and the technological development cannot be stopped. I have a question. How many of you have your smartphone now in your hands? How many of you did download ALDE Congress application? Wow, this is great. And of course, this ALDE Congress application brought you here to this great panel, so thank you for that. As I was expecting, the majority of you have. So how many of you can imagine living without your cell phone, getting back to sending messages via Telegram? Maybe some of you don't even know what was Telegram, and maybe the pigeons as well. Well, I will give you one example from my favorite native town, which is the city of Zlín in Czech Republic, where the famous Czech entrepreneur, shoemaker Tomáš Baťa, who was a genius 100 years ago, and he said exactly in 1917, he said, "There are many of us left who do still remember that the working day of our father started at dawn and ended close to midnight. The result of such work day was one pair of shoes, a half-broken back, and crooked fingers. Do we really want it back? Surely none of us would like to live such a life. What did it cost our present better existence? Was it the industrial machine? Yes. Did the machine accomplish that all by itself? No. And this is the point I want to come. The machines and robots cannot work themselves. There must have been someone who invented them. And there must be always someone who will manage them. Also, we must not forget the emphasis on craftsmanship and creative industries and talent of people. These are areas in which human benefits cannot be replaced. And I have a good news for a lot of you. Some recent studies confirm that politicians will never be replaced by robots. This is a good news. Well, I am coming to my 4 main points, 4 key messages I want to leave you with. My kind of ideas or advice on how we should respond to this changing environment and current fear. First, we must absolutely change the communication. Concerns about robots taking our jobs usually come from the research community, technologists and trade unions, and are widely reported in the media. But there are millions of numbers. We don't have clear numbers. So there is a big difference if you use the number 9% of jobs will disappear or 53% of jobs will disappear. I saw a very concrete example in Czech Republic. One famous Czech trade unionist used in the TV this number, 53% of jobs will disappear due to digitalization and robotization. You cannot imagine the fear, you cannot imagine this populism. So we have to be very, very careful about that. Digitalization is and will be an important source of economic growth and jobs creation as the two always come together. So our goal must be to manage the changes well and turn ongoing digital developments into real opportunities. How? And this is my second point. Change of education system. New jobs can only arise when there are enough skilled people capable of adapting to this rapidly changing environment. We already have the tools, we need to do this. We just need to get them educated. Education got stuck somehow in schools with a learn first, act in the world later. And this attitude must be changed. Our kids now need an education that is far more connected on the real world. Moreover, every skill that we teach in schools becomes obsolete after a couple of years due to the growing technological advances. So how we can change that? And this is my third point. Developing skills for jobs and for jobs needs. We will never make it to teach new skills without private sector. So thank you for companies for being with us always, because we need involvement of this triangle. We need education system, businesses, industry, employers, and policymakers, of course. You need policymakers, sorry, but everybody needs them. We need to involve social partners, education and training providers, and there must be very strongly involved at all levels to anticipate the needs of the labor market and develop curricula which adapts to these needs. We need work-based learning to bring people closer to the labor market and also to create the first contact with potential employers. We need to focus on entrepreneurial skills, on digital skills, on soft skills. Well, there is a mystery for me why we call soft skills soft, because they are the hardest to get, but we call them soft. So we have to focus on that. We have to focus, and this is the fourth and last my point, on job creation. We should stimulate investment in businesses and creation of favorable regulatory environment. The focus of our work must be on the removal of barriers and national requirements that prevent a true single market. And also we should support job mobility, job-free movement of people in Europe, which can help solve the lack of skills on the EU labor market. So I'm convinced that these are four main principles we should follow. Not only that we don't need to fear of any technological development if we follow them and if we start from education, but we will boost Europe's competitiveness to be able to stand and prosper in this today demanding world. So thank you very much. Thank you for developing together this. And I wish you a very good future of work, because as I know, all liberals, our future, fortunately and unfortunately, is to work. So let's do this future better for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. And let's move on straightly to our fourth speaker from Estonia. He's already, for the last 10 years, a member of parliament there. Worked on e-government, worked on a lot of issues starting with an E, but as we know, Estonia is famous for this. And just in the last few months, worked on new regulations for apps, applications, or organizations like Uber and Taxify. And maybe he can just share something about what he did there, because it's somehow new in Europe. Mr. Kalle Palling.
Hi, I was born in 1985. 3 years later, we had a singing revolution in Tallinn, where 300,000 people gathered together to sing our country free. 3 years later, we regained our independence, and now we are 26-year-old re-independent Estonia. In 2007, I was elected to the Estonian parliament, and I was 22 when I got elected there. And I was often asked that what kind of work have you done before that you are now elected to the parliament and trying to create new policies for us? And I wasn't ever thought about what kind of work should be the precondition of being elected to the parliament. I just had some mission, and since the age of 12, I've been doing different kind of things, earning income for myself. When I was 12, I sold ice creams in the beach. When I was 15, I went to Finland to collect strawberries. And when I was 16, I started to arrange different kind of events in the schools and earned quite a good money for myself. And I never thought that this is a job or this is a work. This was the way I wanted to spend my life and to live. And I think that the biggest challenge nowadays is that people are trying to identify themselves through work. And this is, at least in my mind, totally wrong. Coming back to the singing revolution, what was the result of the singing revolution? The Iron Curtain fell. The same thing happened in Berlin, where the Berlin Wall was taken down in 1989. And this was the border between the East and the West. This was the border between the free and the closed world. Nowadays, the border issue is coming popular and popular again, where one guy promises to build a wall in United States of America, or some leaders in European Union are also trying to build the walls. But this is not the question, and this is not an issue that I want to stop on for too long. I'm talking about the mental borders in our heads. And this is something which I said, where people are trying to identify themselves through the jobs. And politicians, of course, what is the most popular promise? Will create more jobs. Can you raise somebody who knows what kind of jobs we want to create after 5 years? Probably we don't have any. I was just discussing this issue this week in Estonia with McKinsey, who was supposed to be here speaking in this panel as well, and introducing the report that they made for 9 digital front-running countries, and we prepared it a bit, and a friend of mine presented a good result of his self-study, and said that did we imagine 5 years ago that we are going to LinkedIn and we'll find that kind of jobs like social media manager? Did you know that you'll find 350,000 social media managers in LinkedIn nowadays? Did you know that we'll find 184,000 bloggers in LinkedIn? 500,000 community managers, brand ambassadors, social media manager, I already said that, content strategist. These were all these jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago. So can any politician say that what kind of jobs we need after 5 years? Probably not. But we have a solution here. Let's enable the technology. The bad news is that robots and technology are replacing most of the jobs in the near future. But the good news is that the technology and enabling the technology creates even more jobs than this which were replaced. But we are here we as politicians are here to enable the technological reforms, whatever. And now I have one example. 2.5 years ago, we met with the representatives from Uber and Taxify. Taxify is a Estonian startup based on the same model as Uber is operating worldwide, and they are currently the second biggest mobility app in Europe. And they said that they would like to operate in Estonia legally, because they were Googling Estonia being one of the front runners in digital sphere. And I said that, of course, if it's, let's say, my thing to say, welcome. But we'll have to discuss it, and we'll need a regulation. And in 2 years, we collaborated this way that it was platforms from one side, it was taxi companies from the other side, it was tax and customs boards from the other side, and we all collaborated around the one table. And now, since the 1st of November this year, this law came into force, and we guaranteed a level playing field for mobility, and we created the environment for flexicurity, at least in one sector. And if I say flexicurity, this means for me that you don't have to be worried that if in one day some of these, let's say, things that you have done before to earn your income is going to be replaced from other things, and you don't find a full-time commitment to do something else. We'll need to have different opportunities to earn income. We don't need jobs. We don't need working place and table and an office in the corner. We need opportunities to earn income, and that's, I believe, is the most important change in the mindset that we politicians, we as parents for our children have to guide. We have to be the figures that the people don't have to be afraid of the change in the labor market, the change in the technology. Of course, we need education, we need more skilled labor, we need all these things, but we needed these things before any other change as well. So this is normal. We have to educate ourselves. And just two last points which I want to say, coming back to the example of enabling ride sharing in Estonia and creating the model that could be used elsewhere in Europe as well, was that in many countries taxi companies are lobbying that much to protect the technology which they use, which should be in the museum for many years already. Taxi meters, plafoons, so on and so on. We don't need them because application, Google Maps, Waze, they can calculate the routes in a much easier way. The receipt will be automatically sent to your email. And we figured out the solution in Estonia that even the information about the driver's income could be automatically sent to Estonian tax and customs boards and automatically will be added to our pre-filled tax declaration. It's so easy. So the tax is not an issue in sharing economy. There just have to be will. And the last point is, and it goes for all the technological reforms, that politicians can't blame the technology for developing too fast. We can only blame ourselves for acting too slow and implementing the technology. We used to have the practice in Estonia that if one specific law is changed, then probably after 5 years we don't touch it because we need, let's say, this security and certainty and then predictability for the sector and for the customers and for everybody. But currently, if technology changes so fast, we must be ready to change the law even 2 times a year if needed. We can't just look that technology goes far beyond before the regulations will catch it. Fintech sector, insurtech sector, transport sector, mobility, everything is changing because of technology. And I think that our only duty, our only task as politicians could be to embrace it. So thank you very much. Good luck, and let's embrace the technology.
Thank you. Kalle, please stay. Thank you, Kalle. Please stay, and may I invite also the three others to come on stage to have a panel discussion for the next 20 minutes or so. Please. So basically, all of you actually mentioned the point of the fear of robotization and the fear that there will be no jobs anymore, or less jobs than we have now. How can we tackle this fear?
Well, first of all, hello.
Yes.
First of all, I believe fear comes with not knowing enough. We're afraid of things that we don't know about. And it's so often misused, this fear, also by politicians. I am a politician. And I do try to bring more stability and discuss the future in a sense that we see it as an opportunity. Because by the law of physics, it can be only one thing at the same time, at the same place. And if we bring optimism and we can show the developments in a sort of throughout the historical perspective, people will see that there were always jobs disappearing, jobs appearing, and jobs that were sustainable, and they evolved. And I do believe that we need to, through this kind of perspective, help to construct the structures within our society that really, first of all, create new knowledge and skills and create opportunity for people to get new knowledge skills, being in the school or being in a model of sustainable training and sustainable personal development. On the other hand, we also need to be very brave to constantly talk about technology as an enabler of better life, but in order to help people. That means that we need to bring the also positive side of this technology. And let me speak from the experience. We see in maritime, inland waterways, also on roads, we see more and more jobs moving, for example, from the sea onshore, from the river onshore. Of course, this is scary for captains, for example, also for truck drivers, because automation is coming, and it's scary. Oh, what's going to happen to our jobs? And this is exactly the type of people that we need to train, educate, and inform better. And the system should just have that. If we are a modern society, we should have the systems in place. Yeah? And really allow people, when their job is challenged and they see that they're going to lose the job, not because they didn't do well, but just because we have this technological shift, we have new business models evolving, let them enter the stream of retraining and education.
So let them learn their whole lives,
Exactly, lifelong learning. I mean, I'm shocked, like, with the statistics, when in Europe we stop learning after the age of 45. I mean, come on. I'm going to live over 100 years, so I plan to work at least till I'm 80. So I better learn all the whole period in order to be able to create value, because that's what empowers people.
Martina, you talked also about these new skills, and how do we educate those new skills to young people?
Well, it's very interesting, because if you think about what will be needed in the future, we know that the first thing will be the flexibility and the possibility to adapt, always to adapt. So this is why we will need lifelong training, because we will need to have people very flexible. People will probably change their careers several times during their life, which is something which was not so normal in the past way of working. So this adaptability, flexibility is a very important point. The second point I mentioned it already in my speech, are these soft skills. Soft skills, I mean teamwork, networking, being open, having certain mindset, being able to do the speeches, to do the presentations, and it's very difficult how you should learn these skills, teach these skills. But this is something that we should really focus on. The third point I see very important one is entrepreneurial skills. And here, I hope that all liberal friends will understand me, because sometimes I have big fights in the parliament, because left side of the parliament is telling me, well, Martina, you would like to see everybody in business. But this is not the point. Entrepreneurial skills doesn't mean that people will be in business. It means that they will have open mind and they will have approach to life which is entrepreneurial. So this is something that I'm really fighting a lot for in Europe.
That we have to invest more in education, and on the same hand we can see right now that governments are investing less on education.
Absolutely, and one point I touched there, it's not only education for the primary school, for kids, because of course, if we are talking about digital skills, you can all imagine that they are much better than all of us together, because kids are able to work with any digital tool we give them. But what will be a big challenge is older generation, because they will need to change and to adapt is this digitalization and automatization. So this is why we need to invest not only in primary education, but in lifelong training. And this will not be done only by private sector. So we have to invest, and we have to promote all these possibilities to invest.
Kalle, do you have any examples in Estonia how you are dealing already with this issue of lifelong learning?
Yes, of course. I mean, it has come up with different times. I mean, after the financial crisis, which we had in 2008 and 2009, we already realized that we'll have to have some model for the people that lost their, let's say, way of earning income or jobs, and currently it's even more important, and especially it could be the solution for the whole Europe. I mean, at the times when we face the migration crisis, for example, we see people out traveling, trying to change the location with whatever purposes, for whatever reasons might be behind it. But as I mentioned already, the word mindset. This is the core, and I guess that probably in the future we must overlook the higher education basis as well, so that is it really so important to make a precondition as a PACLI or something like that, and then 4 years in the school. So probably it could be step-by-step learning and working together, and then it could be, let's say, more win-win for the both sides. So for me, and then for the company I work together with or work for at the same time.
But so as a government, you're involving also like the companies and the businesses?
More and more each year, but of course it's the change of a mindset that we'll need still in the universities of Estonia as well.
Yeah. Is there any role for Google in it? Google will always say yes, because you think there's always a role for Google, isn't it?
Of course not. Okay. If I may, the obvious answer is obviously yes, but I would like to jump a bit on the previous questions that you raised. First of all, the question of fear, because this is something which is I've thought a bit personally a lot, and working for Google, we face that kind of questions quite enough. I think the way to address the fear is threefold. First of all, is to have open discussions, platforms where we can discuss, and stakeholders can take part of it. I mean, we have created a coalition on artificial intelligence, which is composed of companies, NGOs, and so on and so forth. And then you see that, I mean, people from the whole spectrum of society can express their fears, concerns, suggestions on this. This should be inclusive. The second thing, I think, is transparency, because people might feel that, you know, somewhere back in the Silicon Valley, people are doing some creepy stuff that nobody knows and nobody understands. So what all the companies which are involved in this machine learning and AI stuff, they are doing is that they are publishing all the research. This is public. And by the way, Google, but it's not only Google, other companies as well. We have made open source TensorFlow, which is our AI software. So this is about the fear. I said that it was three things, but I forgot the last one, so hopefully I will remember it later on. But coming back to the education part, I think this is where companies can play a key role. I mean, we have trained 3 million people on digital skills. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be, I mean, we have some curriculum which is, you know, for PhD and so on and so forth, but we have also trained SMEs. We did an amazing project in Italy which was called Crescere in Digitale, where Italian SMEs had the opportunity to, you know, create a website, know how the ads work online, etc. So they had the ability to find new markets, expand, and so on and so forth. It created more jobs. They found new market shares, and so on and so forth. So this has been one of the most amazing experiences, as far as I'm concerned, in Google.
Kalle? In terms of, let's say, education and brain trust, I think that the countries nowadays and Europe as a whole must consider the living environment as a top priority. I mean, you don't have to invent all the things by yourself, but you must attract the talents to work for your company, to work for your country, to work for Europe. So currently, why are most of the startups that are on the second phase, on the scale-up phase, going to Silicon Valley? Because Silicon Valley attracts in terms of capital, in terms of education, in terms of skilled labor. So here is the one point where Europe is a bit behind, and this has been the principle for Estonia, as we are 1.3 million population country, so we are quite small. We can't afford to teach and educate all the people we need for ourselves, so we must definitely attract the talent, be as open as possible in terms of economy, in terms of migration policy. And that's why I think that in many fields we have succeeded so far.
Okay. Violeta?
Yeah, I would just like to invite us, an audience, into maybe just imagine that the future of income and the future of jobs is not part of political agenda, but it's part of the fundamental structure of the society. When socialists are in power, they try to give as many rights as possible to workers. When liberals, or let's say, or some other parties come on power, they try to stress the more flexibility and give the businesses more freedom to develop and employ, and then also, of course, change the workforce based on the program. I don't think that any of them works for the benefit of sustainable society. I do think that this is something that we should just take as fundamental element as health or infrastructure, which means that system solution is absolutely necessary. We need more flexibility in workforce. I mean, we cannot cope with dynamics of the changes that business models are bringing, and opportunities are now rising much faster than they ever before. So flexibility of workforce is absolute must for the progressive society. But you could, if you just introduce that, then you bring fear on board, then you bring uncertainty on board, and you do not maximize then the creative potential of people. So we do have to have then in parallel a system that deals with these changes, that brings new skills in a dynamic format on board, but also that it calls upon people that it is also a personal responsibility to invest in yourself. And you have to have a chance to do that. You know, so we need a little bit more of a systemic approach into this, not jumping from one strategy to another on every 4 years.
Well, when you're talking about flexibility, what politics or politicians can do, it's less rules, deregulation. I mean,
or clearer and simpler rules that are clear to workers and to employers and to the business owners. So the rules need to be clear. It doesn't need to be just 2 or 3 of them, but they need to allow that you can replace the workforce, or that you can change teams in the dynamic forum, that you can move them around, but with a high consciousness of also social rights. So this needs to be balanced. It cannot go into extreme.
Martina Dlabajova. Martina?
Just very quickly, we are always talking about the skills and the kind of job which will be for the future. We are forgetting one very important thing. What will change as well, and what is already changing, and we are not fast enough to follow it, it's the alternative work arrangement. People are not working as they were working 10 or 20 years ago. There is remote working, there is part-time working. Digital technologies is allowing to work in completely different way. You don't need anymore your table with the chair, because you can work from anywhere, and it's very difficult. So this will increasingly displace traditional employment relationships. And you cannot imagine how difficult it is when we are talking about some labor, new approaches in the parliament, how difficult it is to somehow convince other colleagues that all this will change, that you don't need like the traditional contract. And you know, all 28 labor markets in European Union are very unflexible. Some are becoming a little bit more flexible, but a lot of them, mainly the old big countries, they have very unflexible labor law. And this will be the biggest barrier for the future. So we have to think not only about the real skills and jobs, but about work arrangements.
Kalle?
I just wanted to reflect before, but saying about this insecurity of trying to comment the insecurity of people about the future of income or works. I think that nowadays we could admit that policies by politics don't have to be the mirroring of, let's say, self-doubt of its citizens. I mean, this is a question whether to lead or to follow. And if the politicians once in a lifetime would start to lead, not saying that there are no politicians leading anywhere, but basically it can't be only the reflections on if some sort of sector in the society is afraid of something, then of course some politicians have a medicine against it. And the medicine could be a different, whether to add more, let's say, social guarantees or to add more opportunities to achieve their challenges. So I think that the last one and the leadership issue is also really, really important, especially nowadays if so many things are changing at one time.
Do we have too much focus in Europe to the big firms, to the big companies, instead of the smaller businesses? And of course, I will come to Georgios to say it from his opinion. But Martina, do you think that we're too much focused on big companies because they bring a lot of jobs? So countries are very happy to have them.
No, come on. I come from the small companies. I had 7 companies in different European countries. So what is interesting, I can even say how it was in real life, which country was more favorable, which was not. So, you know, it's very interesting to see it from the ground. But I think that Europe actually is aware of the importance of small and medium-sized enterprises. And we really need to help them somehow, to give them the possibilities to create jobs as well. And, you know, digitalization is one of the tools, because digitalization really allows small and medium-sized enterprises to be innovative, to grow better, to be alternative, to be creative in some way. So I very much believe in this, but we should just not create too many barriers for their business.
Okay, because you know there are research that are saying that big companies are creating more inequality, creating of course with data, you know, with data privacy, they have too much power.
Well, first of all, I'd like to kill the myth that big companies are creating more jobs than small. That's not true. Entrepreneurship creates by far more jobs, even in Europe, than the big companies. But both are needed. We need big companies to create a certain economy of scale and volume and to really push for big scale innovation and scalability of innovation. But the workforce actually, it's much stronger represented in small entrepreneurships. And we need to nurture that. And that is one of the strengths of EU. In transport, for example, we have 11 million people employed currently. I mean, by far, most of them are employed by small companies, SMEs, family-run businesses, and we're very much aware of that. That's why when we introduced new legislation, we always take a look at the next step. What will be the consequences, and understand really the challenges that they're dealing with. That's why we're pushing now for digitalization so strongly, that they have a better advantage when they also use digital means, that they decrease the administration burdens. For example, with the latest road package, mobility package, for 60% we are decreasing the administrative burdens of haulers and logistic business. So that will give a chance also to smaller ones to get engaged. But of course, it's very important also how we're going to share data, because if we don't share data, then these small entrepreneurships and startups don't have a chance to even get involved. So we need to be very careful when we do legislations that we ensure that we support the nature of European economy as well, which means availability of data, open data access, that startups, SMEs, small companies can really get engaged, and then big companies also have space and they can do scalabilities and they can do the step forward.
Before wrapping up, Georgios on this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I can only agree with what the previous speakers have said. I think that SMEs are the backbone of the European economy. Everybody knows that. I just would like to stress that, I mean, in Europe, we do have a thriving digital economy. I mean, we have a lot of startups which are just amazing. We have unicorns, more, you know, their valuation is more than $1 billion. Many things are happening all around Europe, from Lisbon to Estonia. So what I think that we need, I mean, this is more for politicians than for companies, to help them scale up. I mean, this is where probably as Europeans we are lagging behind. And so to answer to your question, I think we probably focus a lot the policy debate on the big guys. I would say that this is fueled by competitors as well, so the big boys hitting each other and trying to hit each other. But I think that at the end of the day, what really matters is what is going to be the impact on these SME startups or scale-ups if we have a very high level of protection on different sort of policy areas. And I think this is something that you as politicians should try to strike the right balance.
The fragmentation definitely is...
Sorry, Kalle, what did you say?
The fragmentation definitely is an issue, I mean, in European Union in terms of scaling up. I mean, for a startup, it could be good to choose Berlin, London or something to grow, but for a scale-up, you'll have to do something else. But in terms of small companies and big companies, I have one good example which I got, let's say, realized a few days ago, watching some TED talk. Did you know the camera, let's say, photo camera company Kodak? Everybody knows. Raise your hand if you know Kodak. So Kodak was the company that invented digital camera. So they made this digital photos. And who has Instagram in their application? Some list of the applications. So most of you. Okay. Did you know that the value of Kodak at the time when Instagram was sold to Facebook was the same? So basically 1 billion, or what was the price? So a company with a big history, being pioneer in inventing, let's say, digital cameras, being the biggest companies probably in this field, and then just suddenly some SME discovers an app and sells it with the same value. So basically everything is possible, and there are not big and small companies. It's just big or small ideas. Okay. And the border is in our heads.
Very short last question, just try to answer it in one sentence. In 5 years from now, what will be the biggest difference in the work of a commissioner?
I don't think it's going to change much.
Okay, that's one sentence. Thank you. The work as an MP, what will be different in 5 years from now?
I can only say the same. I think it's probably similar, but as I said before, that we are more willing to change things faster. Not saying that we did it 3 years ago and we can't touch it.
But can I add something?
I will give you the last chance to add something.
Okay.
The work of an MEP in 5 years from now, the same as now?
We will be working even much than now.
More than now. Mm-hmm. It is possible.
Yeah, it is possible.
For you then. We know from some others it's maybe different, but for you, okay. And for you?
I would say, talking about public policy in Europe, I would say I hope that we will have a a discussion and debate around digital, which will be more based on facts and not based on passion.
Okay.
Wow. I just wanted to say that the reason why in 5 years from now it won't change much is because we made so many changes in the last 3 years that it will take a while before they all get really settled in and be challenged again.
Look at that. That's the real politician, and it can be never taken by a robot, I think. And you know, we need the humans on those places. Thank you so much for this session. Violeta Bulc, Georgios Mavros, Martina Dlabajova, and Kalle. Thank you.